everyone, and welcome to Tabor Talk. I'm your host, Michael Tabor. So, what a beautiful night, and I just have this kind of camouflage sweater on, and I'm comfortable. So, enjoying the great weather. So, getting right into this, I'm finishing up on an older Tim Ferriss podcast with his guest is. Linda Randall, who's a physicist, best-selling, New York Times best-selling author. She's awesome. She teaches at Harvard physics, theoretical physics. And midway through, Tim asks Lisa her thoughts on God, the two theories, the soul theory, body theory, life after death. In fact, I did a video earlier on touching on this life after death, blah, 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 blah. And I actually pointed out what sucks about life is having a body, a meat vehicle, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, interestingly enough, Lisa Randall, she says, listen, we all want there to be something after this meat body dies, but it just doesn't seem like that's the case. I mean, physics, like the physical body is important. Like even was it last week or week and a half ago? Richard Dawkins was on Joe Rogan, and they got into consciousness. And Joe says, "Well, we really don't know a whole lot about consciousness," and he was talking about psychedelics. Is there life after death? Blah blah blah. And Richard Dawkins said, "Well, yeah, sure. We really don't know what consciousness is, but I do know one thing: that consciousness has a lot to do with brains, right? And without brains, there's no consciousness." Very good point. Touche. So, anyway, I'm going to talk about something that happened in my life. Just one example. My wife's high school friend, about 5 or 6 years ago, actually had a minor surgery that went wrong. She had liposuction, and she had multiple strokes, and it was horrible. And she ended up eventually dying a year later after this surgery. It was just beyond words tragic. But she was a completely different human being before and after the surgery. She suffered brain damage. She was an 8-year-old girl. When we met her, we talked to her. That the Linda before the surgery was gone. She was not there. It was this completely different human being. And I didn't know her back 20, 30 years ago. I said, is there any trace of the old Linda? Even as a kid, she goes, nope, gone. All right. Beyond words, sad. So the question is, and even Lisa Randall talked about it, her mother suffered serious brain trauma, and the same thing. My mother was not there. So what's going on here? What happened to that person? Gone? Is that person in heaven? My wife's friend Linda, was she, even though her body was here and she had the mind of an 8-year-old, a confused 8-year-old, was this other Linda, the old Linda, somewhere else? I mean, we all know people who suffer from dementia, Alzheimer's. They're gone. They're not there. Your loved one is no longer there. This is a good tie-in. I want to talk about Phineas Gage, right? People are not familiar with the story. Phineas Gage, 19th century railroad worker and a rod. I actually have it here in Wikipedia. 1823 to 1860. He's working on railroad, and this is what happened. Oh, the lighting is bad. Damn it. The light is reflecting on the screen here. So actually you could see a rod through Phineas Gage's skull. And before and after, before the accident, went right through his eyeball and into his head and severely damaged his frontal cortex, left frontal cortex. And before the accident, Phineas Gage was an upstanding, solid citizen, married, children, monogamous, kind of shy, in fact, post-accident. After the accident, he survived. Post-accident, Phineas Gage was a hellraiser. was loud and obnoxious, cheated on his wife, started drinking, was just this completely different human being as a result of this spike going through his brain and damaging his frontal cortex. So the question is, I will pose this to theists or Christian, whatever. What's going on here? So where's the righteous Phineas Gage before the accident? Now here's another question, right? So Christian doctrine, right, very hinges on obviously behavior, moral behavior. You have 10 commandments or all these rules. Phineas Gage, after post-accident is what I guess Christians would say call a really bad person, right? Hellraiser, cheating on his wife, liar, cheater, just this awful person. Who gets judged? Now, does God or Jesus or whatever, does this God judge Phineas Gage before the accident? Or Phineas Gage 2 after the accident? You got to answer these questions. I mean, these Christians will, they'll avoid it, like, oh, I've talked about with Christian apologists with this Phineas Gage case, and they get super uncomfortable. They get really, like, you just, not that I'm trying to corner them, like I said, like, Christian doctrine hinges on behavior and this and that. You damage your brain, you're a different, totally, completely different human being. Okay. Very interesting questions, right? So I am, as I said before, I'm a universalist. I don't know, nobody knows, but I sort of think that there are other dimensions. I think that there's a very good possibility that there is something more after we die, that perhaps consciousness survives the death of the body. I know it sounds outrageous, especially if you listen to Lisa Randall, because my consciousness is very closely tied into my brain. Michael Tabor, I'm talking here. Consciousness. This brain, without this brain, there's no video here. There's no talking. There's no consciousness. All right? Okay. Leave it on that note. I'll end it here. Good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding here on Tabor Talk.